Hey everybody, my name is Deja and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm giving y'all personalized book recommendations. I have seen people do this video quite a bit where basically their audience sends them in things that they want recommendations for. It could be emojis, certain phrases, tropes, anything. And so I decided that I really wanted to do one before the end of the year, and so I asked on Instagram and my community tab and chose I think 15 of the ones that I knew that I could definitely give recommendations for. Sorry if yours is not on here. There were some of them that I was like, I don't have a book for this, so I didn't choose those, but I'm really excited to get into this today. And I am at school, as I say in most of my videos, so I don't have all of the books here with me. I don't think I have any of the books here with me that I'm talking about in today's video, but I really crafted these recommendations, so I'm really excited. So let's just hop straight into it. So the first one was suggested to me by Books and Lindsay on Instagram, and she did a camping tent, some wood logs, a canoe, a tree, a knife, a blood drop, and then a face, the gasping face. And so I have two recommendations for these. I have two recommendations for most of these. So I have a horror and a thriller recommendation for this. So the first one is The Honeys by Ryan LaSala, and this one I absolutely loved. I read it earlier this year and it is young adult, but I really loved it. This one, I remember we follow our main character Mars, who is gender fluid, and they've kind of always been overshadowed by their twin sister Caroline, but Caroline recently passed away very traumatically right in front of our main character Mars, and so Mars decides that they are going to go back to the camp that them and Caroline both used to go to. Mars, you find out later on through different reasons, decided not to go back to this camp, but Caroline was actively staying at the camp when she passed away. So they decide to go back to this camp to try and discover like everything about her and just kind of immerse themselves in her life. But they start getting involved in this friend group that Caroline was a part of called the Honeys. And not everything is what it seems at this camp, and not everything is what it seems with the Honeys. It is very good. I really love this one a lot, and I would highly recommend it if you're looking for something that kind of has like summer camp vibes, because this one definitely has that, but it kind of goes into like more of like a weirder type kind of horror vibe. And the other recommendation I have for this that's a thriller is The Last Time I Lied by Riley Sager. This is one of my favorite Riley Sagers. Actually, I have a ranking video of all of his books up on my channel if you would like to check that out. But this is one of my faves of his for sure. So we follow a painter, and back when she was a teenager, she went to a summer camp and her three friends went missing one night. So she is kind of grappling with this, and she incorporates a lot of this into her paintings. But one of the owners of the camp decides to invite her back as a camp counselor, and so she agrees to try and get some closure for herself. But while she's at this camp, she starts to discover some unsettling things and just like weird signs. While these signs are going on, three girls also disappear, mirroring the past, and it really caused our main character to confront the past and the present. We love Riley Sager's writing, like we know this. He has such addictive writing. I could read his books extremely fast. They're just super fast paced, but if you've read a Riley Sager, this has very similar characterization to his other characters, which I personally really enjoy, and I think that this is definitely one of his top works. I know a lot of other people don't agree, but I love a summer camp vibe, and so this one was one that I absolutely loved. Next up is from Instagram, and it says Island Horror Nature Weird Trippy. And so the first one that I'm going with this one is Wilder Girls by Rory Powers. This is actually another young adult horror, but I really love this one as well. In this one, we follow our main character, and she goes to this school for girls, and I believe it's on an isolated island, but they had this tox outbreak and they've been quarantined for 18 months, and it's really upturned all of the girls' lives, especially our main character, and it transforms students' bodies. They get super like weird and mutilated, and our main character, she has been quarantined, as I said, for 18 months, and suddenly her best friend on the island or at school with her disappears. So she kind of breaks this quarantine to try and go searching for her, and she kind of discovers some really horrific truths about the school and also kind of what is lurking outside the school that may be impacting them. This one is such a good weird trippy horror that's also kind of like summer islandy vibes. I really like this one. I believe this one is a retelling of Lord of the Flies. I've never read it personally, so I can't accurately tell about the retelling aspect of this story, but I think if you like the vibes of Lord of the Flies, you'll definitely enjoy this one a lot, and it kind of goes into more of like some weird trippy like mutilation kind of like weird vibes that I really enjoyed. And the second one is a classic. It's another horror. It's called The Troop by Nick Cutter, and this is one of the first horror books that I ever read. I have a reading vlog of it on my channel from, I believe, 2020 or 2021. This one is very interesting. So we follow a group of Boy Scouts, and every single year they go to this island and they go camping there, you know, like doing their Boy Scout thing. And so they go to this island and they have no communication with the outside world. Like they get rid of all phones, everything like that. And then suddenly this man comes up onto the island that's looking a little messy. He's not looking his absolute best, and he's basically saying like he's hungry, and they're like, okay, like, you look like something's not right here. I don't want to get too much further into a description for this book because it definitely takes off and goes into some interesting directions. I would say this one, the other horrors that I've mentioned so far are definitely, I think, good for beginners, but this one I will say does have some graphic animal deaths and stuff like that in it. And obviously for all these recommendations, please look into trigger warnings, but I will say that she does have some animal cruelty. I know that's a big one for a lot of people, and it is a little bit graphic, and the characters in it are younger, so if you think any of that's going to be triggering, I wouldn't recommend this one. But I loved it, and I thought it was super gross and disgusting, and I ate it up. Next up is a request by Sarah's Sassy Stacks, and she requested boarding school settings. And this one I have a thriller and a fantasy, and a lot of these have been at boarding school settings, like Wilder Girls and The Honeys is kind of like a boarding school camp, so I would definitely take those recommendations as well. But I have a thriller that is young adult because a lot of boarding school settings are young adults, unfortunately, but the fantasy is not. So Lessons in Vengeance is the very first one that I have. We're following our main character, and she goes back to school after the death of her girlfriend, and she's really grappling with that. And at this school there has been this mysterious group of 5 girls that were a part of the occult. They are said to have been witches, and they went missing years ago, and they're kind of like a school legend. So she's just really trying to focus on like graduating because obviously she's been through some really traumatic stuff, so she is really just like trying to make her way through. This new like really eccentric brilliant girl shows up and becomes a part of the school. She enrolls in the school, and our main character kind of takes interest in her, and she takes interest in her back. So this girl is like really looking into the occult and trying to find these 5 missing girls. So our main character gets swept into this and starts looking for these girls as well. So if you're looking for like some darker witchy occult boarding school vibes, I think this one would definitely be a good one to start off with because it definitely has like those darker kind of vibes that I really love. So I really enjoyed that a lot. And I personally just really love witches, so this one was definitely one that stood out to me. And next up is one that I recently read, and that is Every Heart a Doorway by Shauna McGuire. And this one was so fun, but it also had like some darkness to it that I did not anticipate. This is the first book in a series that all takes place at Eleanor West's home for wayward children. And in this world, there are portals to other worlds in it. So it's very similar to our world, but they have these doors that lead to other worlds, and children often go through these doors and go into these other worlds. And a lot of times these worlds are actually really amazing and they love their time there, but when they come back from these worlds for various different reasons, they kind of feel like a loss because a lot of them feel like this is like the place that they belong, this is their home, they found their family, like they really felt like they belonged in these places. So their parents or other people often send them to this home. Even if they don't believe them, people get sent to this home, and they basically kind of rehabilitate these children in a way and integrate them back into the real world. And so this one definitely has boarding school vibes. We follow our main character, and she recently got back from one of these worlds, and some mysterious things start to go on in the school. There's definitely like a mystery that I was not anticipating that I really enjoyed. And if you have been sitting on this series like how I was, I would definitely recommend starting it because I absolutely loved it, and I didn't anticipate to love it as much as I did, even though everybody else does. It is so good. I can't describe it. I love the writing, I love the pacing. It had such good commentary in the series. From what I've heard, I've only read the first book, is extremely diverse with gender and sexual representation. I know the main character in the first one is asexual, but we see a lot of different people throughout this story just in the first book, let alone throughout the whole rest of the series. So I think that this would definitely be a good one. And it's also really cozy, so if you're looking for kind of like a cozier fantasy that also kind of has like a mystery element to it to read by the fireplace with your Christmas tree twinkle lights in the background, this is going to be the one. Next up, I have one from Sarah. Sarah is one of my patrons. I love her. We've been friends for a very long time. She's been one of my longest supporters, and she asked for something spooky and said good luck. She's read 300 books this year. She's read a lot of books, but I did cross-reference Goodreads, and this one is not one that is marked as read. It's marked as TBR excited for Sarah. I specifically was looking at Sarah to try and find something spooky that she has not read yet. So this one I'm going with Goddess of Filth, which is another one that I read a couple months ago that I absolutely adored. Like, if you're looking for witchy, yeah, this is it. Like, this is what I wanted my best friend's exorcism to be, and it just wasn't. Okay, this one ate down. So this one follows a group of 5 girls in San Antonio, Texas, and they, I believe, like, are Mexican. I don't want to mispronounce any of the words. I'm not Hispanic. I don't speak Spanish, so I don't want to mispronounce anything, but I believe they incorporate a lot of like Mexican culture, or they are Mexican, and like that's their heritage. So they are just like 5 little girls in San Antonio, Texas, and they're just trying to like escape their everyday kind of just issues. So they decide just to like do a lighthearted little seance, but then one of their friends kind of starts acting strange, and all of the candles go out, and she starts speaking in like tongues or like a different language. So they're like, okay, but then like she kind of just like comes to and they just think that she was like sick or something, but then she starts acting different, and not only them but also the priest in the town begins to fear that there may be something kind of demonic within her from the seance. If you like The Craft, you'll love this one. I love The Craft. I love the vibes of it. Like, this is definitely like The Craft vibes, but like make it actually have culture, and I really love that. And as I said, like if you can combine The Craft with My Best Friend's Exorcism with culture, this is it. And I would highly recommend it. It's super short, so if you're looking for like a shorter witchy horror, yeah. Next up is one from Adventures in Pages, and this is Brother's Best Friend / Best Friend's Brother. And for this one, I'm going with a romance called What a Match, which is one that I read earlier this year and loved. Okay, this is one of my favorite all-time romances. Like, it's gonna be on my favorites of the year. We follow a woman, and she's just kind of like a little teacher, and she is like, you know, approaching 30 or just hit 30. So she's like, okay, like society's telling me that I need to like start getting married, start popping out them children. So she joins a matchmaking site and is going on dates and trying to find, you know, like the love of her life. And at the same time, her brother runs a boxing gym with his best friend, and his best friend, his apartment complex, like something's happening with it, so they can't have any of the tenants stay in there. So he tries staying with the brother of our main character, and it just is not working out. Our main character's brother asks the main character if he can stay with her, and she reluctantly agrees because he's always seemed very standoffish and she's never really been his biggest fan, but she reluctantly agrees, and they start to have a little romance, and it's so cute. I absolutely love this one, and it's definitely kind of like, I don't know if I would call it grumpy sunshine, but he's definitely like grumpy, but like doesn't mean to be, if that makes sense. But it's dual perspective, so like we're in his head and we know his thoughts, which I love. And this one is perfect to read in the fall. Okay, it does not have to be read in like September, October, but there is a scene with a pumpkin that was iconic. Okay, this pumpkin scene was iconic, and if you're just looking for like a cute, fun romance that's by a Black author, this one is one that I would definitely recommend. It has been a standout for me, and I think about it quite frequently. Next up is one from my friend Quinn. Quinny Hale on Instagram, and she asked me something Meg, which she's referring to Megan Thee Stallion, who is one of my favorite artists, / Summer, who's Summer Walker, another one of my favorite artists. She's actually like my favorite artist. Something that they would read. So I have one for Meg and one for Summer. So the one that I'm recommending to Meg is The Weight of Blood by Tiffany D. Jackson, because Megan is all about feminism. Okay, she's all about women. All right, she loves us, we love her, and she loves horror. She's actually a spooky girly. She loves Halloween, she loves horror. She also really likes anime. I know a lot about Megan Thee Stallion, like the Megan Thee Stallion lore in this brain. Go crazy. She loves horror, she loves Halloween, she loves women, and she's Black. So I was like, okay, what book represents this? And it's The Weight of Blood. This is actually a Carrie retelling told by Tiffany D. Jackson, and it subscribes very close to the actual original story, but it's 10 times better, okay? And it's not ran by a misogynistic, racist white man. Like, occasionally I'll read a little Stephen King here or there, and you know what? That's fine, but like we all know he uses slurs in his books. He has a lot of misogyny in his books. I feel like we're beating a dead horse, like reading this man over and 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 over again. Like, let's read something different. Tiffany D. Jackson comes in, okay? So we follow our main character, and she is biracial, but she very much like hides it. She has curly hair, she straightens it. Even when it rains, she doesn't go outside because they believe that like her hair getting curly, I'm pretty sure it's like curlier than mine, so like like, you're gonna know she has a little bit of something else in her, that she's not white. So, you know, one day she's on the track field and it unexpectedly rains and she gets revealed, okay? And she gets made fun of, bullied, literally, basically harassed. And this does not look good for the school. The school doesn't look great because this does take place like current times, like I believe like 2018. But in this town, this is actually realistic. People were complaining that they don't think this is realistic, but it does actually happen where there are towns in the South where the schools don't host official proms. So then that way the white people can go off and host their own prom. And when they host their own prom, they just won't invite any of the black people. So it's kind of like segregated proms where the black people have to like host their own proms, and they're very much segregated. So the school decides to host their first official one, and it's like supposed to be this big like integrated prom. And she gets asked out by the popular black kid actually at the school, who is made well with the rest of the white kids at the school because he's an athlete, which I really love that, because I don't think white people understand that like black people are often fetishized a lot or placed on this pedestal and only liked if they are participating in sports, because sports bring money, sports bring attention. So a lot of athletes, even if they're black, are still good with white people and even racist people because they bring something to sports. So I really love that commentary. But she's asked out to prom by this boy, but things don't go to plan. If you know Carrie, you know this book, but it's just like the way that she took it and the way that she put her own twist on it was just so smart and intelligent. I actually read this book for a book club that my friend hosts, and we had a live show discussion about it. And in that live show discussion, like I really truly started to realize like the depth of intelligence that Tiffany Jackson has. She really paid attention to every single detail of the story. You could just tell everything was purposeful. Every single word on that page meant something, and I love that. I just love Tiffany Jackson. She's one of my favorite authors. I also have a guide to her on my channel too, but I just love her so much. And then for Summer Walker, the book that I would recommend to her is Go Deep by Rosie Adams, because Summer Walker is kind of more of like a soft girl. She's a little crazy, but like she's very like soft, romantic. Like that's the vibe of her music, and I think she would really appreciate Go Deep. So this is a friends to lovers romance where we're following our main character, and she is in a writer's block. She is a writer, but she is in a writer's block, and she writes really erotic, like romantic fiction. So she's telling her best friend, who's a man, about this, and he's like, okay, well, let me inspire you then. And she's like, oh, I'm gagged. And so she's like, okay. And like you can understand like the type of inspiration that he would give her to like you know, get rid of her writer's block, and you can understand. This one's really short as well. This one is short, sweet, and to the point, but it's one of my favorite romances that I've ever read. It's so good, and I just really love this one. Next up is one from my patron Shannon, and she asked for craziest twists or female empowerment. A lot of the books that I mentioned do have like a lot of female empowerment in them and crazy twists, but these are specific ones that stand out to me for both those. So one of them that has both these in it is The Push by Ashley Audrain. This one follows our main character, and she recently had a baby, but she does not feel like any attachment towards this child. And she just, you know, thinks that it's her. She thinks it's a fluke, but then she has another kid and she feels attachment towards him. So it's something about her and her first child, who's her daughter. Something about their relationship just isn't clicking, and she acts a little not great. She has a lot of temper tantrums, a lot of just like behavior that she doesn't like, and they butt heads significantly as she gets older. So we follow her as the child is progressing. Like, but this one has a lot of commentary on motherhood, which I feel like it's not necessarily female empowerment, but it definitely like has that commentary, which I feel like is female empowerment in a way, because I feel like discussing the struggles of motherhood is not something that is socially acceptable yet. I think we're getting there, and that a lot of people are trying to create safe spaces for mothers to talk about like not bonding with their baby, how hard it is after postpartum, how hard it is getting back to work, like all these different things. So I really appreciate that conversation in this book, even though I am definitely not a mother myself. Okay, I just turned 21, guys. Like, I don't need to be a mother at all yet, but I love motherhood in books. Something about it. I've always actually been really interested in motherhood. This is a side tangent, but I used to watch like what's in my hospital bag videos, like my birth story videos, like my first trimester pregnancy update. Like I used to watch those videos when I was like 10. Like I don't know what it is, but I've always just loved motherhood. So I think like seeing that discussion in a book, I just really resonate with it. And then this one also has some crazy twists. I can't get into them at all, but It has some crazy twists. And then I also want to recommend The Perfect Marriage for crazy twists. This one doesn't really have female empowerment, but I wanted to recommend it. So we follow a woman who is a lawyer. She's very like top notch, like really like the best in her field, and her husband gets arrested. And you may be thinking to yourself, why did her husband get arrested? It's because he got arrested on the charge that he murdered his mistress. And this is the first time that our main character is finding out that he has a mistress. So she's kind of gagged and gooped and glumped, like he had a mistress and then he killed her. But she actually does not believe that he is the one that murdered the mistress. So she decides, you know what, the only person that can accurately defend him, the only person that will do him justice is me. So she steps up to the plate, and even though her husband was cheating on her, she decides to defend him in a court of law. And this one has some crazy twists. I remember I was in a reading slump and this pulled me straight out and I was gasping at every single turn. Now, is this the most literary masterpiece of all time? No. But is it kind of good? Yeah, but it's good in a certain way. Like if you're looking for plot twists, if you're looking for drama, if you're looking for tea, this is gonna be the one. One that definitely has both is They Never Learn by Lane Fargo. So this one I love. We follow our main character, and I believe her name is Scarlett. She's a professor at this university, and she's actually also a serial killer. You know, professor by day, serial killer by night. And she kills men who are involved on the campus, whether they're students, faculty, or staff. If they have committed some horrific crime against a woman, she's gonna come for them. And people are starting to get on her trail. And then we also follow another perspective of a girl who's a student at the same university, and she starts to have interest in her roommates, actually, like romantic interest, and it's kind of like her bisexual awakening. And the twist in this, gagged. I was gagged, gooped, and glumped, as I said. I loved the twist in this one, and this one is definitely female empowerment. I know for some people, they've said that this one goes a little too far for them. So if you're like not into like, yo, like women, like if you're not hardcore about women, then you may not love this one, because I have heard some complaints that people think that this one goes too far and like villainizes men. So like you have to be careful, okay? Because I'm not trying to have people yelling at me being like, Deja, you recommended a book that is against men. Like, I'm not. Like, okay, like, you could feel that way, but I don't feel that way, so, yeah. And I do want to do an honorable mention to one other book for craziest twist that I just thought of that's not on my list, is The Kind Worth Killing by Peter Swanson. I love this one. Basically, we follow two characters, and one's a man, one's a woman. They are on the same airplane, or like in the same airport, and they begin talking, and one of them is like, hee hee, like, wouldn't it be so funny if like we like killed my significant other? And the other one's like, kind of down. And then it kind of just devolves from there. It's very crazy, and I love that one. Okay, the twist had me gagged. So next up is one from my friend Lauren, and she is at Happy Haunts Library. I love her channel. Check her out. She put some emojis, and she put a cake, another cake slice, and a cookie. And I have two ones for this one. The first one is Legends and Lattes. We all know her. We all love her, but I still wanted to recommend her because I don't have many other books that I could put for this. This one is a very cozy fantasy that's not very plot. It's very character driven. We follow, I believe it's an orc. I believe they literally describe it as a battle-stricken orc. And so, you know, she used to be in battle, whatever, you know, fighting it out, duking it out. But she decides, you know, she kind of wants to settle down, have a slower pace of life. And on her travels of, you know, being in battle and war, whatever, she has come across coffee. But she goes to like this small town. They've literally never heard of coffee. They don't know what it is. So she decides to open a coffee shop. And at this coffee shop, she is not only just trying to open it, build it. Literally, we're seeing her build it from the ground up, literally cutting the wood. Like, it is cozy fantasy. They're cutting the wood and building the structure. But besides just seeing her build it, we're seeing her trying to market coffee towards these people who literally don't know what coffee is. And then we see her bring in like baked goods and like hire on more people because the business is up and booming, and like the difficulties of running this business. And it's very interesting. I thought it was very fun, and I had a really good time reading it. So if you're looking for a cozy fantasy that has kind of like pastries and coffee in a coffee shop, and like you could just like read it in like the fall winter time, and it's super cozy, like a warm hug. So the second book that I want to recommend for this is Brownies and Broomsticks, which is actually another cozy book. It's a cozy mystery. So we follow our main character, Katie. I feel like I haven't been using names, but so we follow Katie, and she is an assistant manager at a bakery, but she's just kind of like not feeling it anymore. So when her aunt and uncle open up a bakery and offer her position, she's like, yeah, let me do it, because she's like wanting to move to a slower pace of life anyways. But when she's working at this bakery, she kind of notices her aunt throwing in some weird herbs into the food. Turns out her aunt is a witch, literally. She's not doing anything malicious though. She's just like, you know, making it taste good, taste delicious. But she kind of finds out that she might also have some magical powers. And obviously, of course, this is a cozy mystery, so someone ends up dead and her uncle is the prime suspect. So she and her aunt, with the help of some magic and spells, are trying to clear his name. This one is super good if you're looking for just like a cozy witchy mystery that also has like baked goods in it. I would definitely recommend this one more for like September, October, but I think you can definitely carry it over into like November, December as well, because it's just super cozy. And if you like, I feel like this fits into kind of like that subgenre that's developing of cozy fantasy, that's like witchy cozy fantasy, like the X-Hex, the very secret society of irregular witches. Like, I feel like this one could definitely kind of fit in there as well, but it's also like a traditional cozy mystery. Next up is one by Script Reads, and this is Quiet Horror Recommendations. And for this one, the first one I have is Our Wives Under the Sea, which is one of my favorite books of the year so far. We follow a woman, and she went on an expedition into a submarine underneath the ocean, and she ended up disappearing and being down there way longer than she was supposed to. So we follow her perspective when she was in the submarine and what went wrong, what happened, but then we also follow the perspective of her wife and after she comes back. So we are seeing the trauma and the impact that being in the submarine for so long had on her, and how it's not only impacting her but also impacting her significant other. And this one is definitely more quiet horror. I adore this one so much. I love the commentary and it just has my heart. Like, oh my god, this is just one of my favorite books for real. I love the prose, I love the commentary, I love everything about it. And then another quiet horror one that I read earlier this year is Woman Eating. This one follows a mixed race vampire, and she is struggling with her need for blood, but then also kind of like the morality of feeding on humans. And she really does not want to feed on humans at all, and she starts to develop feelings for a human actually, but she, you know, she can only digest blood, and she has this very much insatiable hunger. She's away from her mother for the first time, and she's also grappling with the longevity of her life and being alive for eternity and what that means to her. This one's definitely more quiet horror, because it's nothing happens in this story that is like in your face blood and gore, but like the subtleties of it are so horrific, and I just love this one too. I love vampirism being used in horror because I think it's such an interesting device, so I would definitely recommend this one as well. Well, next up is a request for horror books for beginners because they love horror movies but don't know where to start in books. I would honestly highly recommend Grady Hendrix as a whole. My favorite of his is The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires, but I read a ton of his backlist, and I highly recommend him for beginners because his horror is kind of a little bit more like goofy and lighthearted. It's not too serious, but it still has horrific elements in there to kind of like ease you in and get you used to horror. And then I would also recommend any YA horror that I've recommended on this list. And then I also really love House of Hollow and The Year of the Witching as well. The Year of the Witching is more like historical, and House of Hollow is more modern day, but if you like kind of like naturey vibes in horror, I would definitely recommend those. And as I said, I recommended a ton of YA horror earlier in this video for different tropes, so I would recommend any of those as well. So YA horror and Grady Hendrix I think are great places to start. So the last Instagram recommendations were asked for tropes is revenge, fictional cults, and haunted houses. So I have a book for each of those. The first one is revenge, and for that one I went with The Perfect Ruin, and honestly on Goodreads it has like a little part that describes the book, so I'm just gonna read that because I feel like they describe it the best that it could. It says, "The glamour of Miami has a dark side in this twisting story where nothing is what it seems, as one wronged woman seeks to destroy the seemingly perfect life of one of the city's most revered socialites." This one has a lot of twists in the end, and it is like literally, bitch, I'ma steal your life, but like for a reason, not just like, oh, like I really want your husband or I really want your life. Like, this woman is seeking revenge, and I absolutely had such a great time reading this. And this one is one of Haley's favorites. She gave me the book. I basically dropped it in the pool, and I just have really good memories attached to this book, so I really enjoy it. Then for cults, I'm going with Black Sheep by Rachel Harrison. I haven't read many cult books, but this is one of my absolute favorite books of the year. I love Black Sheep. We follow a woman, and she's like a cynical 20-something-year-old, and she is estranged from her family because they are part of like this super religious cult, and she broke away from that. And once you break away from the cult, it's one of those cults where like you can never be invited back for birthdays or weddings or anything like that. And then she ends up getting invited to one of her family members' weddings, and turns out that this family member is getting married to her ex. So she's like, nah, like I gotta go, because how you gonna marry my ex? Like, both y'all betraying me for real. And she ends up going back, and she was definitely invited back for a reason, which we definitely find out. This one I absolutely loved. I don't think it's gonna be for everybody, but I love the writing, I love the humor. It was fast paced, and if you love the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, specifically season 1 or 2, you'll love this one, because it gives heavy Chilling Adventures of Sabrina vibes, like heavy, okay? And I love that show, so this one I really loved. And then the last one is haunted houses, and somebody else also asked for haunted houses and spicy, so I kind of combined those into 2, and I'm going with Haunting Adeline. This one follows a woman, and she moves into her grandmother, I believe it is, home, and her grandmother, she's reading like these diary entries and finds out her grandma was stalked, and things start to happen to her as well, with some stalking but also some kind of like weird hauntings happening in the home. And this one was not one of my favorites, but I still wanted to recommend it for haunted houses and spicy. And I honestly like hate haunted houses. I have not read a haunted house that I absolutely love, so I don't have one that's not spicy as a recommendation, because I really don't like haunted house horror. It'll be okay, but like I never love it, so I don't really have a recommendation. Now we're moving on to the YouTube recommendation. So the first one is Ghost, but where they are not like the bad guy or if the villain, if that makes sense. So basically Ghost book where they're not the villain. And for this one I went with Layla by Colleen Hoover. It kind of has some villainous, but it's like very twisty turning all over the place, so like I don't really classify it as that. But we follow a man and a woman, and they have like this very much whirlwind rock star romance, but a woman comes into their house that is actually the ex of the man, or like is interested in the man, and he's very much rejected, but she is like a stalker and crazy, and he ends up killing her in this struggle, and it leaves the woman in the relationship very much injured. So after all this crazy stuff, he decides to take them back to the Airbnb where they first met, but the Airbnb is actually shut down. It's not an Airbnb, what am I saying, it's like kind of like a hotel, but like more like an inn, like think Gilmore Girls Inn. It's kind of more like that. He ends up renting out the whole thing, and there may or may not be some hauntings going on. Yes, it was pretty good. I enjoyed it. It's not as good as Verity. It was just like a fun ghosty time, if that's what you're looking for. Next up is Winter Isolation Serial Killer, and for this one, this serial killer doesn't really fit, but it's rock, paper, scissors. We follow a couple, and they entered this giveaway to go on like this anniversary trip, but turns out they were not invited there by accident, or they didn't win by accident, I should say, and someone is coming after them. And I love this one. It was such a good thriller. It was super fast paced, had a lot of twists and turns, and I really enjoyed it. One of them that is not like one of my favorites that I think could fit this more is Near the Bone. It definitely has Winter Isolation and serial killer, so if that's what you're looking for, Near the Bone is a good one, but it just wasn't my favorite. We follow a woman, and she's in a very abusive relationship, so watch out for that. And there's also kind of like a creature in the woods where they live, because they do live like isolated in the woods, and like they go like hunting, foraging, like that kind of stuff. They don't live in the town. And there's also a creature, so this one kind of has like real person horror, but then also creature feature horror, but I just don't think creature feature is my favorite. Next up was a request for slashers, and the one that I love is Cirque Berserk. This one's on my favorite books of the year. We follow a group of teenagers, and they were supposed to have like their senior day, but they were like, it was lame, but we have this vehicle rented until tomorrow, so let's go do something else. So they decide to go to this place called Cirque Berserk, which is an abandoned like circus. It's not a circus, it's like an amusement park circus type thing. They end up going there, and there was actually this history behind it where these teenagers who worked there back in the 80s were accused of killing these people, but they have never been found, and they basically just disappeared. So there is kind of some theories that they are haunting this amusement park, and people sometimes go missing around it, and there's definitely slasher vibes. We also get flashbacks to the 80s, so it definitely has heavy 80s vibes as well, and I just absolutely loved it. It was so much fun. And the last request that I have is lighthearted / wholesome books or graphic novels to make you smile. And I recommended some books earlier. I would say Legends and Lattes, Brownies and Broomsticks. Those ones are both ones as well. So I went with mostly graphic novels for this. And so the first one that I have is Garlic and the Vampire. And there's also a sequel, Garlic and the Witch. And we follow this little bulb, Garlic. And she's part of like these veggie fruit people that this witch made to help her in her garden. And so a vampire ends up moving into a castle nearby, and all of the veggie people and the witch are scared of the vampire. So Garlic ends up going to figure out the intentions of the vampire, and it's so cute. And Garlic and the witch is just as cute as well. I love both of them. So I could recommend Heartstopper, but everybody knows Heartstopper. So one that I'm going to go with instead is Check Please, because I feel like if you like Heartstopper, you'll like this one. We follow a baking little college student. He's a freshman, and he's actually on the ice hockey team, and he starts to have feelings for one of his other players on the team, and he is just like a little baking little cutie boy. And this one I would definitely say is more graphic than Heartstopper, like not graphic but like more sexually explicit, but it's not like anything extreme. It's a graphic novel. So that's all that I have for the recommendations today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you would like for me to do another one of these, you could definitely request them down in the comments, and when I collect enough, maybe I'll do another one in 2024. So let me know if that's something that y'all are interested in. If you made it to the end, leave a little garlic emoji down below, because I love garlic and I love Garlic and the Vampire graphic novel, and I will see y'all in my next one. Bye everybody.
I'm writing rhymes in the kitchen, soaking in moments we live in, yeah. You got the nerve to be on me.